What sets Leiths apart is the fact that we are constantly evolving what we teach.
Our founder, Prue Leith, her vision was about techniques, flavour and ingredients.
Leiths creates the talent to drive change in food. Take a look at our alumni, startup entrepreneurs, food developers, food writers and chefs. Schneiderman, and I'm the managing director here and a Leiths alumni as well. So thank you for joining us this evening. I know that there's going to be people coming and going throughout this whistle-stop tour of the Diploma. We just want to give you a little flavour of what it's like to be on the Diploma here with us at Leiths. So for those of you who don't know, Leiths was founded in 1975, so we're hurtling towards our 50th anniversary, by Prue Leith and Caroline Waldegrave. At the time, Prue had a very busy catering business.
I don't know if it's intentional, but the microphone seems to be on mute.
Can anybody hear me out there? Are we?
I can hear you.
I can
Okay,
hear
great.
you. Yeah. I can
Okay,
hear you.
great. Thank you so much. Always a possibility for a technical hitch on a Zoom. So it's great if you let us know what's going on. So as I was saying, Prue started a catering business that was a very busy business. She was doing really well. It was the 1970s. The food at that time in Britain was not at its topmost moment. And she found it incredibly hard to find chefs or cooks to come and work for her in her business that could cook the good, simple, uncomplicated, unfussy style of food that she wanted to produce. So she started a school with Caroline Waldegrave at the helm, and it moved from its original home in Notting Hill to Kensington, and now we are in a leafy part of West London, just near Shepherd's Bush. So the ethos of the school to this day still remains the same. It's all about training practical chefs and cooks to go into the food industry and to find a path that suits the individual. It's all about becoming independent, using the best ingredients, and also developing a really firm skill set so that you can take off into whatever direction your talents take you. Our school is just as appealing to school leavers as it is to career changers and everything in between. So you're joining us tonight to hear a little bit more about the Diploma course, and that's what we're going to be focused on. As many of you probably know, the Diploma is a 3-term course. So it comprises the foundation, intermediate and advanced terms, and each of those are about 11 weeks full time. So that includes an assessment week at the end of each term. Some students with previous cooking experience may be eligible to join us in January for what we call the 2-term diploma. So that's omitting the foundation term. And it may even be that some students come from one of our short part-time professional courses, such as the Essential Certificate, having done that, and then join us for the 2-term diploma to complete the diploma from January onwards. And if you think that that is you, then please do book a one-to-one chat with us so that we can assess your skills and help you to decide whether that is the right pathway for you. Most students choose to take all 3 terms. And the reason for that is just simply like there's nothing like going back to the beginning and going all the way through and making sure that you have those foundation, those building blocks to build on. The diploma course is, as I said, full-time, and your day is divided between practical cookery and demonstrations. And there's going to be more on that from Hannah and Lou later. It's important to mention that not everybody can afford the time or the money to take the full diploma. And that's why we have a really wide range of short part-time professional courses, which can also be taken online if you can't get to the school and it's not practical for you to be here with us. So those courses include the Essential Certificate. So that's the basics, the foundations of cookery skills. We also have a plant-based Essential Certificate, which is all the basics, but all entirely plant-based. We have a chef skills course, which is like the follow-on, the more advanced course after the Essential. And we also have a chef skills patisserie course, which is an amazing gateway into the patisserie world. And of course, not forgetting the amazing nutrition and culinary practice course, which is completely unique. And we brought this course to market about 8 years ago, and everybody has been loving it ever since. And it is a perfect fusion of learning healthy, nutritious cooking and tying that together with nutritional theory. So as I say, most of these courses are part-time, many of them run in the evenings and also online. So do get in touch if you're interested in them. But as I said, tonight is actually about the diploma. It's our virtual chef demonstration, and it all focused around our 3-term diploma. Through the live demonstration, our head teacher, Hannah, joined by Louise, who is our resident pastry expert, are going to cover teaching style, course structure and content, assessment and feedback. So they're really going to talk to you a little bit while they're cooking, because they're very good at multitasking, about what it's a bit more what it's like to be on the course. And at the end, of course, we're going to have that valuable Q&A. So if you would like to ask us a question, please do that. And in order to do that, just enter your question into the Q&A function, which you will see on the screen. And at the end of that, at the end of the session, those questions will pop up for us. I'm going to grab an iPad and we'll be able to look through them and answer as many as possible. If there's any questions we don't get to, then we'll try and answer you after the event. We will be recording this for marketing purposes, but we will not be featuring the viewer screens, only the speaker. And while we finish getting set up, we're just going to show you a very short video. This is actually some students who are currently studying with us on the diploma, and they're just going to talk to you a little bit about why they chose the diploma and the experience they're having so far. So I look forward to seeing you again in a couple of minutes.
I chose Leiths for a number of reasons. One, because of its reputation. A lot of people speak very highly of Leiths. That always bodes well. The second thing would be the alumni. Leiths has a really broad range of alumni compared to other schools that spans the food industry in different ways, not just restaurants and high-end fine dining. I've come into the course really open to what I might end up doing, but I have a hunch that I may not end up in a kitchen, so that was really important for me. Leiths list was also a really important element, having a structured way to help me find that path and those next steps would be really helpful in an industry that I'm not that familiar with.
I chose Leiths because it gives me the skills, the experience to flourish in my career as a food stylist or open up a business one day.
The teachers are incredibly supportive. They're so welcoming. No question goes unanswered. Just the whole environment is extremely supportive.
I knew I wanted to do something with food for a year. I'm done academia all my life really, and I'm going off to uni after this, but I knew for 1 year I wanted to do something a bit different, something more practical with food.
As an adult learner, it's been a real joy to come back into a learning environment, but to be taught by such an accomplished group of chefs who have such a genuine passion for what they do and really are invested in giving us the best experience and opportunity and the experience of their knowledge.
I came to the diploma from the Essentials course, which is a part-time course at Leiths. It was 10 weeks long and absolutely fantastic. I learned some really amazing foundational skills, but by the end I just felt I wanted to continue. I was enjoying it so much, and it just kind of whetted my appetite to stay here, continue learning.
At least no 2 days are the same. So one day we'll be making pasta, the next day we'll be making souffle, and the next day we'll be cooking game. And that's really well balanced because we have the practical sessions in the kitchen and then we have a theory session in the classroom. The teaching's really thorough at Leiths. There's one teacher per 8 students, so it feels very personal. There's also an element of self-learning with some really good resources, there's skills videos and theory notes, which really help supplement the teaching in the classroom.
I chose Leiths because they don't only teach you about French classical techniques, they also give you chances to learn about global cuisine, laundry and patisseries.
If it wasn't for Leiths, I probably wouldn't be doing a culinary course. They really bridge that gap between being a confident home cook to coming onto a course like the Diploma and really elevating that in a non-intimidating way.
I'm Hannah, one of the head teachers here at Leiths, and this is Lou, who is a senior teacher. Welcome to all of you. I studied at Leiths about 20 years ago. I was very lucky in that I knew from an early age that I wanted to be a chef. So I left school, completed my diploma, and then pursued a career in private chefing for about 6 years. I returned to Leiths to teach, to pass on my passion for food, and also to educate the students in all techniques required really to make great chefs.
Hello, I'm Lou, and I've been teaching here for about 4 years now. Before that, I was a pastry chef in fine dining, and I've got about 14 years experience behind me. As a chef, I've taught lots of other chefs over the years in the kitchen, so I felt like it was quite a natural progression to step into full-time teaching. And across the teaching team, we have a wide variety of industry experience, which contributes to a wealth of knowledge from the teaching team. We would both be familiar faces during your time on the diploma here, both in demonstrations and in the practical classes.
Let's talk about what we're actually going to be doing tonight. So we really want to give you an insight and a look into what day-to-day learning at Leiths would look like when you're here. We're going to demonstrate a typical intermediate term patisserie dish, and we're going to take you through the whole learning process so that you can actually understand all the intricate details, all the requirements to achieve this beautiful dish, which is the Paris-Brest, which we have just here. So at Leiths, a dem would typically be about half of your day, and then you would recreate some of those dishes within the kitchens. You cook completely independently. There's no kind of sharing of any tasks. It's completely on your own. And also you repeat all of these skills during the term. And that means we believe that repeating these skills and doing them over and over again, you become then very proficient in your skills. And it also helps to build your confidence as well.
So the first skill that we're going to show you or talk about really is the making of the choux pastry. And this is a skill that you would cover in the foundation term. At that point in the course, the students would be quite simply using it to make choux buns, which they would then fill and turn them into glazed profiteroles. At Leiths, our aims are to teach you the techniques and the reasons behind why these recipes work, so that you can replicate them in other locations and then troubleshoot going forward in your career. So as a progressive skill, I'm going to show you how to pipe your choux accurately to get a more professional result. And hopefully it'll end up looking something like this. And this demonstrates that with the correct foundational knowledge of techniques, the students can build on their learning throughout their time here, ensuring a more professional and consistent result.
Remove these ones. So the students, in fact, the dish that we're showing you now, they did just a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? So just last week, actually, they completed this in class, bringing together all their kind of skills that they'd learnt.
So they would have seen me demonstrate it in the morning or in the afternoon, and then in the corresponding half of the day, they would then go and try and create the same dish that they see in the demonstration. So I've got my choux pastry here in my piping bag, and I'm going to use a nozzle, and that's also going to help with accuracy as well. We want to think about filling the piping bag really nicely and getting lots of tension on there, and that's going to help us to pipe this really, really beautifully. And then as a little extra tip, I'm just going to use a little bit of that to stick down the paper, and that's going to stop it from moving when I'm actually piping. So I've also got some guidelines on here as well to use as the template, and basically that's going to help again to produce that really consistent and professional looking result.
What we did when we did this with the students last week was they had, especially with these kind of more in-depth patisserie dishes, we had a mise en place day where we prepared everything. So they got their choux ready, they made their craquelin, they made their base for their creme mousseline. And then the next day was really about allowing them to have plenty of time to bring this all together and really be able to spend a bit of time on it rather than kind of rushing through it in a half-day session. So certainly as students move through the diploma, we will kind of very much allow the time for those more refined dishes, bringing together many elements and allowing just those really kind of good dishes by the end. And they did look very successful, didn't they?
They definitely did, yeah. I think they're really enjoying the creativity that comes in this term as well, which is really great to see. So you can see I've piped my choux now, and we're going to add an extra touch to this in the form of craquelin.
So this craquelin, again, would have been something that was made ahead of time. We would have had that made. And really the purpose of this craquelin is, so when the choux pastry goes into the oven, it's going to want to rise. And very often when it wants to rise in quite weird directions, and it wants to it's quite out of control. And that's very much because of the water that's in the choux pastry. That produces quite a lot of steam. And so it can rise quite irregularly. Now, Lou will talk to you in a moment about how the craquelin is actually made, but what it does is as that choux ring will rise, the craquelin that's sitting on top, which Lou is putting here now, is just going to help to control how quickly it grows, and also help to just give it a really nice kind of level finish, allowing us to have a nice level kind of shoe ring that we're going to be able to cut through later on. Do you want to talk a bit about the making of the crackling and the thickness and things?
Exactly, yeah. So it's quite simple, really. It is equal quantities of butter, sugar and flour, and all we're going to do is we're going to bring it together to form a dough. And at that stage, we would need to roll it out nice and thinly. And the key with this to get that consistent result is to make sure that we are rolling it nice and thin to about 2 mils. We then need to let it set in the fridge, and then we can use a little cutter to stamp out beautiful discs, which are approximately the width of the rings of shoe that we've piped underneath. And then, as Hannah explained, when that goes into the oven, that's going to control all the steam that's within that shoe and really control the bake of the whole Paris breast to give us that really professional result. So I've just overlapped them ever so slightly to ensure that we have no gaps in our ring of crackling as that whole thing bakes together.
Shoe pastry is something that they obviously covered a while ago as well. So in foundation term, they did shoe pastry and they did cover that, and obviously did some profiteroles and some quite simple things, but this is now about kind of really allowing this to be a little bit more elevated. With the crackling, there would be a bit of wastage when they've rolled out and they've stamped out everything. We would find often that there is some wastage. We'd very much encourage students at that point and say to them, okay, think about baking this off, maybe crumbling it down. It could be used as a crumb for another dessert. It's about adding texture to another dessert. So rather than just having made that and then discarding everything, we would certainly talk about different ways of being able to do that.
So it's ready to bake now.
Ready to bake.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to bake it, and this is one of the other areas that we talk to our students about in terms of key fundamental understanding. We're going to be asking them, as they're baking something like this, how are they going to know when it's ready? Obviously, recipes come with timings, but we're trying to teach them that intuition to understand, and there's always reasons why. So we're going to be looking for it to be well risen. It should have a really deep golden color. And in between any cracks in the pastry, we might be just checking that there are no gray areas. And that way we can ensure that that whole pastry is cooked all the way through. And we would always be checking with students and asking them and checking with their knowledge to make sure that they fully understand the process all of the way through.
And I think that's one of the things is that when they're cooking, when the students are cooking, when they're taking things out of the oven, it's very much, we as teachers are very much hands-on, always wanting to ensure that they're understanding the process. We don't stand back, we don't let mistakes happen, because we need to allow people to understand the technique and to make sure that they fully understood it. So what we're going to move on to now is I'm going to talk to you about another element that's involved in this. So we've got the Paris breast done, we've got the shoe and the crackling done, and what we now need to have a look at is what we're going to fill this with, because obviously we want to have a lovely kind of rich, really good mouthfeel. We want to have this kind of creme mousseline, and this is going to allow us to have a lovely filling to our Paris breast. So one of the things that we need to start off with in order to make a creme mousseline is that you need to start off with a creme patisserie. So I'm just going to show you briefly with this. And again, it is something, I'm going to avoid too much whisking and loud noise because it will get quite loud if I do this. So we will try and keep it to a minimum. But it is a skill that students would have covered in the foundation term. We're making a creme patisserie, and that is very simply just a base of some egg yolks. And we also have here some sugar and some corn flour and also some plain flour. So the sugar's acting there as a sweetener and to add some sweetness. Now, in this particular creme patisserie, we've got quite high sugar quantity. And the reason for that is that we are going to be kind of adding some butter into this later on, and we're going to be lightening it. And it's going to be unsalted butter as well. So we want to make sure that this creme patisserie is nice and sweet. Shoe pastry, although we often relate it to being things sweet like profiteroles and eclairs and things like that, it's actually a savoury pastry. There's no sugar in there at all. So we need to make sure that the filling is lovely and sweet so that it will balance with everything. So I've just blended together my yolks and my corn flour and also my plain flour. And the sugar is in there. And I'm just going to now just slowly blend in some scalded milk. So we just warm this through. And what we would kind of make sure is that students understand scalding is just that process where there's a few bubbles around the outside, but not boiling, because otherwise you'll start to lose quantities and that could start to affect the quantity of milk that you've got in there. And with patisserie and a lot of pastry kind of techniques and things, it is about being really being quite definite with your weighing up and all of those sorts of things. You need to be really accurate, and you need to have that accuracy. So I'm just going to slowly blend in our milk. We've got a little bit of vanilla in there as well. So that's the vanilla that's just gone through. And there's lots of different flavorings that students could use for this. We're going to be later on flavoring this with some hazelnut, but we're going to just get some vanilla into this base. Now in this pan here, because we've scalded it, what we would make sure is that students either rinse that out, give it a really good clean out, so that you're starting in a nice clean pan, because those things could burn as you start to cook your creme patissiere. So always a rinsed out pan. Obviously for tonight I'm using another pan, but we're going to just get this into here, and we're going to now bring this up to a boil. So when we're doing this, I'm just going to now move over to the stove. Sorry, would you mind just passing me the spatula? Yeah, thank you very much. So when we are doing this in here now, so creme patissiere, we would get students to make this in the foundation term. They would use it for filling some tartlet cases. They'd make it into what's known as a creme diplomat, where we kind of fold cream through it, and they'd use it in tartlet cases with some fruit and some glaze. We would also use it as a base for soufflés. So at the beginning of this term, the students learnt about soufflés, different bases. And so even though you look at this as just being a pastry cream or a French pastry cream, there's so many uses that they can use this for. So this is kind of builds up. It should be a skill that we would expect them at this stage to be quite confident in, and have a really good understanding in there. So they should know the sorts of things that we're going to be looking out for. So they know that as it comes up to the boil, what happens is those flours, we can bring this up to the boil, even though we've got eggs in here, but those flours are going to stop it curdling or doing anything or splitting. And so when they start to bring it up, what you'll notice is that you get some really, really quite large lumps in here and quite uneven lumps. And we will often troubleshoot and say, look, you know, you will get these lumps, you just got to keep going with it. You need to make sure that you just keep beating those lumps out, and it will eventually become really nice and smooth. So we're just bringing this up to a boil now. It's just taking a little bit of time, but we'll just keep stirring. And it is a question of just stirring continuously through this. And what we then want to do, again, we say, okay, this needs to boil for 2 minutes, but what we want to happen is we want to see people tasting it. We want to make sure that we've cooked out the flour, making sure that that floury taste, especially from the corn flour, is completely gone. So it would be very much about tasting at this stage. And so I've got some very kind of large lumps going on in here. And so what I want to do is just at that stage, not to worry too much about those large lumps, but just to continue to stir. And as that thickens, and with the knowledge that they'd have that it's always much easier to beat out lumps when something's really, really thick, you just keep stirring and keep mixing that. And after about 30 seconds or so of mixing, you will then be able to create a really nice smooth creme patissiere. And you can see now that we've got this kind of thickened creme patissiere in here. So that gets made. Always a good taste, making sure that that flour is cooked out, that it doesn't taste cornfloury. And when we're happy with that, and it's had that good bubble, and we've seen those kind of volcanic bubbles coming up through, we would then get this to be stored. So one of the things we would always say when you are storing it is just to make sure that you've got something to close cover it straight away. So I've just got some paper here. And as soon as it comes out of that pan, it wants to form a skin, and it wants to form a skin very quickly. So once it's into there, paper onto the top, and then that just prevents that skin forming. And then we leave it for about a couple of hours, or ideally, if we can, we leave it overnight. It completely sets up. And what you come back to is something that you probably wouldn't want to eat, particularly at this stage. You need to definitely do something with it, but you come back to something that is almost jelly-like, and quite solid in its texture as well. So what we then have to do is we have to sieve that down, and we just make sure that we pass it through a sieve, and this allows it to become a little bit more workable. And then just here, we then want to turn it into a creme mousseline. So to turn it into a creme mousseline, what we want to do is to basically combine softened unsalted butter, and we beat in our creme patissiere into that, and that makes our creme mousseline. It's got that lovely mouthfeel. It also means that you'll be able to pipe it much more easily. It will still have great definition, but it really kind of elevates that creme patissiere and gives it a lovely filling. And so Lou's going to now talk to you about the filling, what we flavour it with, and kind of how we assemble that as well.
Great, that's great. It's super rich and delicious.
It is very rich.
So where are we now? We're going to talk about finishing that Paris Brest, okay? So you imagine your Paris Brest come out of the oven. The ones we have here are obviously kind of individual sized. The one that you saw me piping was definitely more of a celebration. And so this is what it would look like when it comes out of the oven. So you can see definitely large enough to have as a sharing dessert. And what we're going to be looking for now is accuracy in the finishing and really focusing on that detail to get that professional results. Okay, so we're going to be looking for careful slicing of the Paris Brest, and we're going to be trying to cut it in half really, really evenly. I'm then going to be looking for really accurate piping skills as well to make sure that we can get some height and definition with our creme mousseline, because we spent all that time making our creme mousseline. We want to make it look really beautiful at the end. So I'm going to use a large serrated pastry knife, and I'm going to very carefully try and slice it in half evenly. The best way to do this is to almost get down to the same level so that you can accurately see what you're doing. And your Paris Brest will be nice and crispy. However, it's definitely delicate, so you do need to take care with that. So I'm just following it all the way around the edge, so that I can see and hopefully have an even line. And then once I know that I've got that, I can then come through on the inside of the ring. And hopefully I will then have two even pieces to my Paris Brest.
Nothing like doing it on live camera.
Nothing like doing it on live camera. Okay. So we've got a little bit of a gapping in the center, which is completely normal. And I have now got my creme mousseline, and I've got it ready in my piping bag for piping. I've got some here in a smaller piping bag with a smaller nozzle as well. So you can think about the presentation and the finishing, and we can show you a couple of different ways to do that. When we're thinking about the piping and we're trying to get that height and that elevation with our creme mousseline, we need to be thinking about holding that piping bag nice and straight and keeping the distance the same all the way as we're piping. So I'm not really moving it. I'm creating that beautiful big bulb of creme mousseline. And then at the end, just lifting up. Just twisting that piping bag as I go so I can keep that tension on there. So you can see already it's starting to look a lot more professional in the finish. So just follow that all the way around. And that's going to be enough for the center of our Paris Brest. But we might want to think about adding some garnishes, which Hannah is going to talk to you a little bit about first.
So just here, we have got some hazelnut praline, and we've actually got this in many different forms. It certainly adds some texture into this, and we will, with the quite soft choux and also the creme mousseline as well. So it's really about having those kind of different dimensions to the actual finished dessert. So students will start off in the foundation term. We'll talk to them about sugar syrups and how to make a wet caramel. Nice and easy, understanding all the rules. And then we move on to dry caramel, which is probably the most common one that they would use once they have left here. And it's very much about understanding the sugar, what it's going to be doing in the pan, how you can take that to a really nice kind of deep amber color, and then adding in of some toasted hazelnuts. And it's very much about getting this really good balance of the kind of bittersweet of the caramel, but also the toasted flavor from the hazelnuts. And that can be quite hard to achieve. So we get them to make a nice dry caramel, add the hazelnuts, and make that into a praline. And then that gets set up, and you can kind of see that this ends up, it goes onto a baking tray and it gets set up. So you just got these kind of caramelized hazelnuts and some kind of caramel in between. Now, this is nice, it's lovely, but you don't want to eat, because you would be visiting the dentist afterwards. You don't want to be eating great big chunks of this. So what we do is we tend to just kind of break it down into slightly more manageable pieces. So we've taken some which is a kind of chunky, just chopped through with a knife. So we've got that there. We've also got in here some little individual kind of caramelized hazelnuts as well. And then here we've got more of a kind of crumb. Now, if we took this crumb and we continue to blend this for a long, long time, and we use maybe a Thermomix, what you would find is it would actually turn into a praline paste. That praline paste can then also be used in the creme mousseline as well. So it's really about linking all of those things together. But as you can see, Lou is adding various bits, adding that texture in, and this will really allow the whole dish to kind of eat really well, so that in that mouthful, you've got a really good combination.
So I'm just going to simply place that lid back on top. And we have got a plate to pop it onto. If you wanted to think about kind of adorning it a little bit on top, adding a little bit more detail, we talk about presentation as well as part of one of the skills that you might learn when you're on the diploma, and it's a really important skill. I always do say that presentation is a learned skill, but we can teach you some ways that you can kind of follow some rules to get that looking really beautiful to the eye. And so one of the things you want to be thinking about is odd numbers for presentation. So if I was going to do any piping on top of this, I will be having that in the back of my mind. I'm going to use this smaller piping nozzle just to create some little accents of that creme mousseline on top.
We quite often encourage students during demonstrations to take pictures. So i.e. when Lou did this in a demonstration, students came and took pictures of it. They've then got something to kind of remember, because if it's a few days later and they've seen lots of other things, so that they can really remember what it looked like and how they want to assemble that as well. It's a really good reference point for them as well, so that they have that to look back to.
And so I've just got this finer crumb, which I'm going to use on top, because it's just going to suit the top of the Paris breast a little bit nicer. And then finally, I can use some of these kind of half caramelized pieces of hazelnut. Again, nice texture, which is quite a key part of any good dessert, is adding some texture in there. And then if you wanted to feel really quite fancy, which we do love at Leiths, we've got some gold leaf, edible gold leaf, which can be quite tricky to work with. So again, live on camera, this could be quite interesting.
Luckily, the air conditioning's off.
I'm just going to use a very small brush just to kind of pick up a little piece of it and just very delicately pop that on top, hopefully. You can see it just literally flies through the air. But as soon as it hits anything that's got moisture, it's going to stick. And all we're looking to do is just highlight little parts of that just to lift it ever so slightly, so that it literally catches your eye as you see it in front of you on display. Okay, so I'm going to very carefully, hopefully maybe with Hannah's help, just slide this onto the plate.
There we go.
Okay, so there we have our finished Paris breast. And as you've seen with the individual ones, that is definitely something that we would very often get students to do in class. So we're going to try and get them to produce things with uniformity, and that repetition will really help with that skill level. So looking at the shoe, we would be thinking about assessing their product. We would be thinking about how well they've baked it. Was it well risen? Have they piped it evenly? Is it baked well? Is it dried out on the inside? And the finishing, was the piping neat? Has it got definition? All of those things are going to be taken into consideration as a part of an overall kind of marking or assessment, with a little bit of feedback with each individual student.
We give feedback every day, so there may be sometimes 2 services in a session, or there may be one of a main dish, and the teachers will come round, and what we try and do is do a little bit of self-assessment before. So we'll get the students to think about what's worked really well, what part were they really pleased with, were they pleased with the piping, did they feel like they improved from last time and got better at it, what would they want to do next time? So it's not always negative, it's about actually what has worked really well and what you feel like you're improving on every single time. So students will do a little bit of self-assessment, and then we'll obviously come round and as Lou was saying, we'd look at the piping and we'd look visually at how it looks. And then we go into obviously taste it, because that is very necessary. And with the tasting part, we would make sure that it eats really well. So what we mean by eating really well is that the balance of the shoe, the crispness of that, the softness of the hazelnut creme mousseline as well. So that as a whole, is it eating really well? Has the piping been done, you know, the correct amount? There's not too much of that kind of mousseline inside to the pastry. So we'll really look at every single detail. And then obviously we mark things, different things on different days. And so there's kind of different focus points for each session.
And so with all of that extensive feedback that we're giving students at every cooking session, we are going to ask them and encourage them to be writing that down, to be taking a record of all of that feedback that they're giving, because we do try to be really specific and nuanced in our feedback. And that's what students really, really want. They want that level of detail. So they're looking for all of those things and those areas in which they can improve. And we do always strive to give them that level of detail. And so that's why we try and make sure that they are actually taking that on board so that they can go forward, they can practice. We're going to be encouraging them, once they've done a skill with us here, to then try and improve, and then hopefully every time they revisit that skill, they will get better and better and better at it.
We are just going to finish off now. We've obviously got time for some questions, because I'm sure lots of the things we said may have brought up lots of questions. But we certainly hope that this demonstration for you has really reflected our kind of teaching style and how we teach, especially on the demonstrations, the way that we teach professionally, the feedback that we give, and also the personal support. And we feel that with all of that kind of brought together, it really allows for quite a nurturing environment for every student, and suitable for all students. We're going to now hand over to Camilla, who is going to do this.
And hopefully we can answer all of those questions for you. Great. That was absolutely fantastic. I actually completely forgot that I had a job to do because I was transfixed by Lou's piping, and it is really wonderful. And I hope we've been able to show that on the cameras, how beautiful this absolutely looks. And that I'm constantly amazed on a sort of daily basis by the Instagram coming up from our students who are on the course. And we've got a fantastic hashtag, which is Leiths Diploma Live. And the students just post lots of pictures using that hashtag. So if you are interested and you want to see what we're cooking on a daily basis, then I do definitely recommend that you follow that hashtag. And then you can see all the beautiful pictures of the Peri breast going up as it's happening. And as you go through from the foundation to the intermediate and advanced term, you see that elevation and skill level just coming again and again and again, which is very, very exciting. So we have had lots of questions in actually, so I'm going to try and filter them to make sure that we get lots of important information across in the time that we have remaining. So I guess this is a kind of basic one, but actually something that probably a lot of people worry about. What level do I need to be cooking at to take the diploma? Do you want to do this one, Hannah?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if it's foundation and you're doing the 3-term diploma, I think what we would definitely say is, yes, some basic cooking, some cooking that you've done a little bit before, but it doesn't need to be very extensive. What we actually believe is it's the attitude. If you've got a really good attitude, you're hugely passionate about food, that is what's going to get you, and that's what's going to get you through that course. And it is very much, we start from the beginning. We start right at the beginning. We open up the knife wallets, we look at every knife, we talk about every knife, and we would start basically with knife skills. So it can be, you can have almost no previous knowledge at all, and you can just come along and we will take you through, but it's that good attitude and that kind of yearning to learn all the time and every day, which is what that's what you need.
Absolutely. And I do think, that is one of the questions, certainly in interviews, that we get asked a lot is, oh, I don't know if I'm good enough. And as Hannah says, it really isn't, it isn't about that. It's about the attitude and the willingness to learn and the genuine interest in food. Yeah. Once you've got that, you really then every day you want to get better and you strive to be better. And actually quite often, if you don't have too much experience cooking, it actually means that you're a bit of a blank canvas.
Yeah. You're not having to relearn things that you may have already learned as well. And I think the other thing that I was also going to say is that what was I going to, my brain's just gone, sorry.
Well, whatever it was going to be really good. We'll come back to it. The other thing, of course, is that if you are quite an experienced cook, then that shouldn't put you off doing the diploma, because what we find is that particularly during the foundation term, we'll quite often have people who come and say, You know, I love baking. I bake all the time, and I'm really advanced. I've got my own cake business, but I actually am really, not very proficient at cooking meat or fish or sauces and that kind of thing. And so there's an incredible leveling out that happens during the foundation term. And because of the way we teach here, we combine patisserie and cuisine throughout the course. So we're not just focused on patisserie, we're not just focused on cuisine. So there's a huge balance of skills that goes on. So there's never a boring time. If you think that you're a great baker, for example, you might be baking one day and learning something that you may have done before, but the next day you're going to be jointing a chicken or filleting a fish or doing something like that. So actually that evening out of skills happens during the foundation term. By the end of the foundation term, everyone should be at more or less the same level. And then from there onwards, it's about honing and refining those professional skills.
I did remember what I wanted to say.
Oh,
I remember now. What I was going to say was, I think one of the things that people always say when they come here is that they, as soon as they come in and you're with your fellow students in your class, but also in all the other classes, you've basically got 90 people that all feel as passionate about food and all have that same attitude. And that's what's so lovely, because it's like when you get excited talking to a friend about food, but then you've got 80, 90 people that all feel the same. Exactly. So I think that kind of brings everyone together very much as
absolutely
start as well.
I've got a question here about ages. So, what is the typical age of a Leiths diploma student? Lou?
I mean, it's wide open. There is no typical age. This year, for example, we have students ranging from 17 to mid-60s, early mid-60s. And yeah, it's open to everyone. And like we were saying, with that knowledge, you could come with a lifetime's worth of cooking knowledge, and you could class yourself as quite a competent cook. But when you come to us, we'll teach you the reasons behind all of those things that you think you already know to make you an actual much better cook. And so obviously, if there are huge age gaps like that, we will try and group the classes, the younger students together, so they're more similar mindset, and then perhaps the more mature students or the career changers, we're gonna bunch them together as well. But there's absolutely no limit. There's never a bad time to come here in terms of age, to be honest.
No, and we know that a lot of people have come to us and say, I wish I'd done this when I was 18.
Yeah.
But life doesn't always work like that. So there isn't a moment when it's too late. And I think that is such an important thing to remember. And also the community feeling here. You heard some of our students talking earlier, but there is a sort of palpable energy as you walk around the school, and I would encourage you to come in and have a look around, and we can arrange that for you. But actually the friendships that you make here, because everybody's so interested in the same thing, and the working relationships, people who go off and start catering businesses and then use other students to fill in the gaps when they need extra people. There's a lot of camaraderie. I know that in my first job, I went and they were short of a pastry chef, and I rang up somebody that I'd been studying with on the diploma and said, right, you need to get here now. And then, then she came and worked with me. So there's a lot of crossover and friendship building that happens, and actually a lovely crossover between the age groups. So, you don't have to be studying with everybody who's exactly the same age as you to get the best. And in fact, it kind of brings the best out in everybody. So, I guess we should spend a little bit of time talking about this. I've got a question here. What range of careers are available to me after graduating with the Leiths diploma? This is a really big one, isn't it? Start, and I'll probably
we can kind of answer it. So it's endless, really. The range. I certainly remember when I was a student, and I kind of, as I said many years ago, and I left, and it might have been the same for you. It was very much, are you going to go into restaurants? Are you going to go into catering? And that was kind of really the two options that you had. Now we've got people that are going into food development, whether that may be for like a supermarket. We've got people doing product development. We've got restaurant chefs. We've got caterers. We've got people that are writing cookbooks. There's been so many things, especially in the last kind of few years, really people that are quite movers and shakers really of the food industry, and people that have studied here and done lots of interesting careers. So yeah, there's been some.
Yeah, it is. It's obviously the whole point of coming here for 90% of our students at least is that they are launching a serious career in the food industry. And it's no mean feat, to save up the money, to be able to do the course, to be able to take the time out of your life to do it, depending on what stage you're at. So we take that incredibly seriously, and the support that we offer to the students through our agency Leiths List is the kind of fundamental part of being here. So right from when you join us in the foundation term, you have an opportunity to have a meeting with Leiths List, talk about what your career aspirations are, and then we work towards finding you and helping you to find the right kind of work experience, because that is part of your course. So all of our students do a minimum of 3 work experience placements. Some of them will be ones that we've set up, some of them will be guided by the students and their interests. And they might be in restaurants, they might be with catering businesses, they might be in a food magazine, they might be in all sorts of areas of the industry. You might go and do a recipe development day, you might go and assist on a food shoot with a stylist. And all of that is designed to just help you to kind of search around and find what you think is right for you. Because one of the surprising things, I think, is that the students come with an idea, maybe what they want to do, and leave with a completely different idea. And before I know it, they say, no, I just got a job at the River Cafe. And I'm actually going there, even though I said I was going to do something completely different.
That's actually something that I see quite a lot. Obviously, my background is professional kitchens at kind of higher level. So I'm always super encouraging for students who are keen to go in that area of the industry, because there are always going to be jobs for you out there if that's really what you're interested in. And it is quite interesting, because they come and they say, oh no, I definitely don't want to work in a kitchen. I really love cooking and I'm going to pursue a different avenue. But they get into it, they go and do a little bit of work experience, and 6 months later they're like, yeah, like you say, I've got a stage now, I've got a job after the term finishes, and they're really keen to get lots and lots of kitchen experience, which is obviously music to my ears.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And actually, I think that even if that's not your ultimate path,
it's still such a good thing.
The wonderful thing about the food industry is that you can move through different areas, and actually that just builds an amazing CV.
It'll never be a bad experience.
Never.
Exactly.
Also, we had a brilliant evening, virtual evening, which I know some of you must have attended just a couple of weeks ago, and we had Jeremy Lee and various other leaders really in the restaurant world, and they were talking about the caliber of the Leiths graduates that come to them. And at the moment, as you've probably read on the news, there is a desperate shortage of chefs. So to graduate from a course like this, you are, I have to say, pretty much guaranteed to go into work. Now, whether that is your perfect job to start with, it may not be, but definitely you will be moving down that path towards what you really want to do. And so that kind of meeting and alumni creation, the sort of that bringing together is something that we really pride ourselves on. In fact, in the advanced term, we have a careers day. And that's a fantastic event.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of people that will come and do panel chats and things. We get various people in the demonstration room here, and they'll do different chats. And then upstairs in the kitchens, we have about 30 people from the food industry, and it's not just restaurants, it's all sorts of other people as well. They're available for the students to chat to. Very often they get work experience from it. They will chat to people and be like, I never realised I was interested in this. This is what I want to go and, I'm going to go and spend some time at Easter with them. So that's really great. It's a great day, and people really get to talk to lots and lots of different people and get lots of advice. A lot of them are alumni, and so they know what students have been through. They kind of understand what stage they're at in the course. And so, so they can certainly give lots of advice as well. And then we also have a food business demonstration in the advanced term. Someone comes in who consults for food businesses, and he'll allow you to put a food business together, a kind of plan, and then chat you through it. So there's a couple of days of kind of doing that as well for people who want to do it. So there's lots of
and I think the entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well at Leiths. We have lots of students who are really thinking about, at some point having their own business. And so, for example, that day where we sort of explore food business is so important, because it's a sort of dragon's den. You put together your plan and you have to pitch it to the rest of the group, and it gets very lively, and some amazing ideas have come out of it. And so, but having an expert here who can say, okay, you've thought about everything, but you haven't thought about the money, or whatever it is it can be, really very illuminating. So I'm going to have a look at the next question. So, what percentage of the course is practical and theoretical, Lou?
So it's 50-50 really. When you talk about the diploma being 9 to 5, we certainly would be expecting you to kind of put in a little bit of preparatory work outside of those 9 to 5 hours. So you'll spend half the day in a demonstration, and that demonstration could be, one of our in-house teachers, such as myself or Hannah, or it could be someone from the industry. And we have some amazing chefs, restaurateurs, you know, food business owners, people like that who come in, like really, really well-known names, people who are on TV quite regularly. So the experience that they can bring in the demonstrations is unparalleled, really. So half the day you'll spend watching either us or them. We try to be just as exciting as the famous people.
To be honest, they are often more exciting than the famous people, but you know, it's a bit of a competition.
So after that, one week you'll be watching demonstrations in the morning, and in the afternoon you'll be cooking in the kitchens. And that could be something that you've literally just seen that morning and you're then replicating it, or perhaps something you've seen a day before or a couple of days before. And then the following week you'll swap around. So half of the year group will then be doing the reverse. They'll be cooking in the mornings and then watching the demonstrations in the afternoon, so that everybody gets a feel for doing it kind of both ways around. And it's kind of parallel.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as we move forwards into the intermediate and advanced term, we'll have things like a full day in the kitchens.
Yeah.
That's really important. Quite often that involves a creative element. So the students will have a huge list of ingredients that you can choose from, and you have to design your own dish, and you know that can get very interesting and lively.
3,000 different ingredients.
Yes, exactly. Yes, you know, the poor storeroom had to deal with all of that, but it is an amazing experience. We also obviously have group cooking exercises. As Hannah mentioned earlier, you are cooking individually when you're in the kitchens. It's really important that we are assessing you and your cooking, and that we're not blurred by what somebody else has been doing for you. But obviously you need to be able to cook together. So we have group cooking exercises, like
we do a buffet in the foundation term. So within about 8 weeks of you studying here in the foundation term, we give you a demonstration on lots of different buffet dishes, and then you have to go off in groups of 8 and create your own buffet, and then you cook for 32. So it's just to allow that volume, because very often in classes it could be just serves 2, but it's actually then about how you increase on bulk, how different you might treat, you know, your chili powder if you're doing it 8 times the recipe, suddenly all of those sorts of things, how to cost it out as well, so basic costing, the balancing of the menu, all of that sort of thing comes in. So that's done just within the foundation term. And then in the advanced term, we do a group of a dinner party. This is a kind of finale to the advanced term, and 4 of you will cook for another 4 people, so you're cooking for 8. And it's bringing together all of your skills, everything you've learned, bring together into that meal. And we have kind of 5, 6 schools kind of
nothing is off limits, really.
Nothing is off limits.
And it is the
time
best
to shine. Basically.
It is the best day to be in the kitchens.
Yeah.
And if I time it right, I definitely get about 4 dinner parties in one day. And it is a really amazing thing, but it really gives the opportunity for creativity. And another question that I have on here is it all classical French cuisine on the diploma? Do you want to,
Yeah, definitely not. No, I mean, obviously our fundamental cookery techniques are based on that French classical cookery. However, you know, we can't run like that anymore. We've got lots of other influences. We focus on lots of plant-based foods now. That's interlinked throughout the diploma, throughout the whole 3 terms. We've also got lots of influences from global cuisines, you know, it could be from anywhere around the world. And that's also reflected in the guest chefs that come in, you know, whether it's Japanese or Thai, you know, there's lots and lots of options. We obviously focus on things like patisserie, for example, and nutritional cookery is definitely an important aspect of the type of cookery that we're teaching as well throughout the diploma.
Yeah. And it's such an important distinction, I suppose, when people say, what's unique, what's different about Leiths? I think, you know, one of the things is this wonderful age variety that we welcome and embrace and works so well here, but also the modern cuisine and the constant changing of the curriculum to keep up with the times, to make sure that essentially we want to teach the kind of food that people want to eat.
Yeah.
And so all of our teachers have input into their demonstrations, and we'll never run the same demonstration 2 years in a row without double checking. Is this still the food that people want to eat? Do we still want to be upgrading this and thinking about, is there another way that we could demonstrate this skill in a really exciting way that people are thinking, wow, this is really modern and fresh and new?
Also for us, absolutely, to make it interesting. I mean, we're foodies. We just, you know, we're non-stop talking, eating, chatting. It's all about food. So we need to keep it fresh and interesting for ourselves as well.
Absolutely.
So that we can enjoy it while we're teaching it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've probably got time for about one more question, and I'm just going to, we've got a quick question on here about wine. So the wine training that we receive. So do you just want to do a quick,
we can do a quick,
quick whistle stop tour of what is actually a very fundamental part of the course.
So if you are foundation only, you would complete your WSET, Wine Spirit Education Trust, and you would do level 1. And that's completed within a kind of three days, and then the exam is taken. If you're doing the diploma, you would do not only the level 1, you would also do the level 2 as well. And that's very much done in the intermediate term. We tend to fit it into the intermediate when the advanced term is obviously so busy with lots of other things, so we tend to do it during this term. The students went off to a winery just 2 weeks ago, experienced just all of the aspects of that and understanding it, and actually allowed them to put all their kind of learning from the classroom. They were able to put that in and put it into practice. I think that's often quite hard of trying to understand that. So they had a great visit. I think they all enjoyed it and drank lots of wine. So it was good.
That's always a good day.
Exactly.
We have a resident wine expert who looks after the WSET course. So Marjorie's sort of central to that. And she will then bring in lots of other wine experts to teach the groups. We teach in quite small groups. So if you are not very experienced in wine and it's something very new to you, then you're in with a group that has a more similar knowledge level, and then a little bit more advanced as well. And the great thing about taking the WSET, which is the Wine and Spirit Education Trust syllabus, is that it is internationally recognised. So you could take that right on to diploma level if you decided that actually you wanted to work in the wine world. So I know we are coming right up to the wire, but there are a couple of just quick ones, which I'm just going to cover off really quickly. So where do students live if they live outside London? So we don't have our own accommodation. We keep an accommodation list, which we are happy to share with you. We are also happy to put students in touch with each other before they start, obviously with their permission, if they want to think about having shared accommodation. And we're in a really lovely residential area around here. There are lots of areas that the students tend to live, and there are people who will come and add their names to our accommodation list who maybe have a nice room and a bathroom and use of the kitchen just up the road. So you can live very locally to the school. Also, somebody here saying they're from the States and curious if we find housing. So the same answer to that. We can be very helpful finding areas and trying to get you located. There's also some really nice student halls of residence that are within walking distance. There's about 3 or 4 from near here. So we can send you all of that information to help you with that. Is there a social life? Well, yes, there is definitely a social life, sometimes a little bit too much of a social life. When our students bond, we have lots of local pubs. And also we have students who start wine clubs. We have students who will go out and obviously eat in all the lovely local restaurants. So there's a huge amount of bonding.
We try and just at the beginning of the first term, we do a food quiz, and we on a Friday evening, and we bring everybody together, and because very often you might not mix with the other half with their demonstrations, and you're in practical, you may not mix. We try and just incorporate everybody into one, and just obviously having a
few socials.
A few socials does certainly help that as well.
Yeah, and obviously worth mentioning that seems a long way off, but at the end of the diploma, we have an absolutely fantastic graduation. And we go to a venue, we celebrate everybody's success. We have amazing prizes, including trips to the vineyards and trips to olive groves for our top students that can be won. And we have a fantastic party there, and it's a really very celebratory occasion. I often say that if you could bottle the atmosphere at the Leiths graduation, you could sell it for millions and millions of pounds. It is actually a really brilliant and wonderful celebration. I think that somebody's asked about application dates. So just on that, there is no official application date. The thing to do is to get in touch with us. So if you, after this event, would like to take this further, then the best thing, tomorrow we'll be emailing you with lots of information anyway. We'll also offer you the opportunity to sign up for a one-to-one so that you can speak to us either via a video link, or we can arrange for you to come in as well and have a look around the school. So there's lots of opportunities for you to do that after tonight. But really, there's no firm application date. It's just to get your interest in as soon as possible so that we can take you through that process and make sure that this is the right course for you, because obviously everybody is an individual. So we want to speak to every single one of you. If you're thinking about coming on the diploma, we will be arranging an interview with you. And that interview is not a formal interview, it's very much a two-way street where we talk to each other about what you're hoping to achieve from the course.
We also have our taster diploma day.
Oh yes, and we do have, forgot my piece of paper, we have some other events coming up. So we have another panel discussion, which is, thank you so much, she will actually tell me what date it is. So we have got a Careers in Conversation panel talk on food, media, catering, private chefing and supper clubs coming up. And that is on our Diploma Hub page on our website. You can go there and sign up for that. We also have a fantastic Taste of the Diploma Experience Day, which you can book onto, but if you book one of the professional courses, then actually that will be taken off your bill, so you won't actually pay for it. And it's an experience to come and just have a day's experience of being on the diploma, get in the kitchens, do some cooking, meet the teachers and do all of that. And then we also have an in-person open house, so an open day on the 24th of April. So do please sign up and come down to that if you want to meet some of the teachers in person. We'll have some wine tastings and all sorts of things going on upstairs in the kitchens. You can try your hands at some skills, and that's a really fun event as well. So head to leiths.com and you can sign up for all of those events there. Other than that, we could keep talking all night, but I think you've probably got dinners to cook and hopefully you're feeling inspired. Also, the recipe for the Paris breast will be winging its way to you by email tomorrow. So do look out for that so that you can have a go at it. Thank you so much for joining us and staying with us if you've stayed all the way to the end. And do get in touch if you'd like to hear more.